What's up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the MPU-01 thrust with the Takara Tomy MP-11 thrust. So this was sent to me by Ricky G. Thanks for allowing me to take a look at your copy. I actually wasn't planning to do this comparison, but he mentioned it and I thought, hey, why not? This is the only official thrust in the Masterpiece scale that we've ever gotten. So it's worth comparing. It is an older mold, quite old, so it's definitely outdated. I'll just say that right up front. It feels and looks outdated, but worth taking a look at here. Now, with that being said, let's get started. I'm not going to bring in the Make Toys again. We already did that comparison. If you're looking for that one, I'll link that at the end of this one. But let's get started with accessories. All right, here's all the accessories you get. And right away, I was really surprised how little you get with the MP-11 thrust. This flight stand, MPU does come with a full flight stand, and I showed this to T-Man978, and he was like, oh, I thought this came with it. I had to go back and look at his video. It doesn't. So it's just a strange thing they didn't include it. But let's compare. We've got the larger missiles for vehicle mode on both. And then the Masterpiece has a translucent pilot that you can put in the cockpit, whereas I'll count that against an extra face from the MPU. And here's what you're left with. You get two blast effects here for the engines. We get another alternate face, and then we get the flight stand. So we're going to give accessories over to MPU. Next, we'll talk about the gimmicks on these two. And they both have the opening cockpit. They both have the spinning. All right, now let's take a look at the cartoon accuracy and sculpt. In order to do that, we'll put the cartoon image here. Now, there's actually two different images for this cartoon version of thrust. One is a lighter gray, one is a darker gray. And I showed this when I did the Make Toys comparison, but the Make Toys went with that lighter gray look, or I guess it's a darker gray, but not as dark as this. And I believe these guys interpreted that as black. So both of them pretty much have the same kind of coloring, right? Pretty much black on the arms, the chest, the pylons here, top of the head, and then the legs here. So they do look very similar in terms of that. The face is also more similar. Now this is a huge head and face, almost disproportionate to the rest of the body. But as far as face shape, they both seem to have a similar face shape. They both have the painted knees, similar coloring, wings coming off of the legs. So I'm going to give them a tie on cartoon accuracy. I do think they're pretty darn close. Now, when it comes to sculpt, very different. The MPU is more rounded because it goes off of the MP-52 mold, whereas this MP-11 mold was more squared off everywhere. And one of the biggest differences is on the back. There's a lot of kibble and junk back here, and that kind of throws off the sculpt a little bit, but also just in general, I think the fact that it's more squared off, I just don't prefer that. Now, that is a preference, but I do think the sculpt on the MPU does look better. It's a little bit cleaner, especially on the back, but overall, I think the look of the sculpted details and the overall shape is better on MPU. So we'll give MPU the sculpt. Next, we'll talk about the paint on these two guys, and this is kind of a no-brainer. MPU is pretty much 100% painted. The MP-11 has the purple and white paint on the knees here, a little bit of black paint here. There are some tampo details, a little bit of silver in here, and then the face and these pylons are painted. And that's pretty much it. There's not much else going on here. So, I guess the blue here on the fins, but we're going to give paint over to MPU. Next, we'll talk about the build on these two. And once again, MP-11 is very floppy. It always had this issue with the chest kind of sliding up and down, never really locked in. The head also same thing. This backpack doesn't lock in. Things are just loose. So, and that was just generic to the mold, not necessarily this particular character. Whereas MPU, very, very solid in both modes. Nothing moves on it. It's even better than the MP-52 mold. They improved some of the issues, so we'll give build quality over to MPU. Now let's take a look at the articulation on this too. In order to do that, we'll articulate each one individually. MPU, the head is on a ball joint, so it rotates around, goes up and down, and you get side to side. The pylons can fold forward and backwards, and they can angle forwards. There's nothing to have it sit on when you fold it back, so there's not really much use there, but there is that movement there, options there. The shoulders can rotate around on a ratchet joint. Out to the side on this joint, and then if you can combine that with this other one, you get it all the way up to there. So double jointed shoulder. You have a butterfly joint, gets you all the way out to there, which is nice. You have a single jointed elbow here, which gets you almost a full run. If you combine it with this other one here, you can basically get completely anything you want. So that's not really a joint, but you can use it as one if you want to. For the hands, you have a wrist rotation, in and out movement at the wrist, individual articulated fingers at 2 pins, and then the thumb is on a pin, actually 2 pins. So you can get it out to there. For the waist, you have no waist rotation, but you do have an ab crunch down to there. The legs, you can kick up to there on a ratchet, back to there. Out to the side, it does start colliding, so you can just move some stuff out of the way. It's the wing that gets in the way. But that's probably true for any version of thrust. For the knees, you have a single jointed knee, but it gets you almost the full bend due to the sculpt. You have ankle tilts, ankle pivots back and forth, and these are a little bit tighter than the MP-52 mold, so it does hold and work well. For the MP-11 thrust, we have the head on a ball joint, so it rotates around, forward and backward, and side to side. There's a little neck panel here, so you can get the head a little bit more down using that neck panel. Shoulders rotate around on a ratchet, but it starts to lift up the chest, which gets into the build quality, which I already did. Goes out to the side on a single jointed shoulder, so up to there. No butterfly joint and no second shoulder joint here. Rotation at the bicep. Double jointed elbow gets you full bend. Rotation at the wrist. No in and out movement at the wrist. Fingers, the bottom 3 are pinned together, and then the top one is separate. These fingers are not very good. They look pretty, I don't know, quality-wise not great. And then the thumb is on a ball joint, so not fully articulated fingers compared to MPU. And you don't have the outward wrist movement. You have a rotation at the waist. It's not great. I don't know if it's just because it's loose or what you're getting, but it's very little there. But I'll give it to them. But nothing for ab crunch. It's just loose. As far as these null rays are on double ball pegs, and sometimes they come off. For the legs, you can kick up to there on a ratchet, back to there on a ratchet, out to the side, but it's hindered and only gets up to there, not even including the wing. It just gets stuck there. Rotation of the thigh. You have single jointed knee, gets you 90 degrees. We have no ankle tilt or pivot. You do have a toe rotation, and you can kind of move the heel, but there really is no ankle tilt or pivot. So you end up on very unstable feet, which is one of the issues with the MP-11 mold to begin with. It just has a hard time balancing. So because of the extra articulation on MPU, on the hands, the ab crunch, although this had a waist rotation, so those kind of cancel out. And then at the feet, we're going to give articulation over to MPU. Next, we'll talk about the transformation and engineering on these two guys. When it comes to transformation, the MP-11 is a relatively simplistic transformation. I actually transformed this just out of the box without any instructions. It's been years since I've handled this. This one, I definitely needed a little bit of help. It's still pretty easy, but especially the arm area and the back area, the chest where it comes in, it's a little tight in there. So there's a little bit of difficulty there. This one, really easy. However, engineering-wise, The MP11 is just way too simplistic. It just ends up leaving a lot of things to be desired. A lot of loose things, and this chest not locking in, legs not locking in. It tends to collapse on you when you don't want it to. This chest goes up when you don't want it to. Just small little things that they could have fixed with tabs or with locking points with ratchets, stuff like that. So I'm going to give engineering over to MPU, but I'll give transformation to MP11. All right, and there we have both in their alt modes. And let's take a look at each one. They do have some similar features, but some differences here. So first of all, you can see we have the blue and white stripes on the MPU. Opening cockpit with a little seat. No pilot, but it does have a space for a pilot. You have the nose cone, which opens and reveals a radar dish. The engines on the wings, you can rotate the blades. You do have the plug-in missiles here, which fit over the null rays, so it kind of hides null rays, but also makes it look better, look accurate for thrust. And then on the back, we have articulating thrusters for that. And landing gear, it does roll on that landing gear. For the Takara, also have opening cockpit with a little translucent pilot, which I mentioned in the accessories. The same feature here, the opening nose cone with the radar dish. By the way, I never used that feature. Kind of pointless to me. But it is there. You have spinning blades for the engines here. We have the air brake, which all of the MP11 molds had it. Again, not a feature I would use, but it is there. Articulating thrusters on the back, so you can point those. If you open up this, you can kind of get some engine detail. I don't know. It's fine. Again, another feature I would never use, but it is there. It's the heel spurs. You get the landing gear. It does roll okay. It's a little bit unbalanced, but it works. And then their approach for the null rays is they fold up and sit on the side. Looking at both, I do prefer the MPU just because it's painted, and I think it overall just looks better. I think the Takara is a little bit more cartoon accurate, especially with the blue and the white here. But because of the finish, I do think MPU looks better. So I guess there's a couple more features on this one, but I think this one looks better. I'm going to give it a tie. I just think they're both just fine as far as jet mode is concerned. Now let's take a look at the cost on these two. And this is a little tricky because there isn't a store that carries both of these. This guy has been out of production for a very long time, so I had to look it up. I used my typical store, which is ages 3 and up, since they don't monkey with the prices. This guy comes in at $180 US retail back when it was available, so that's the price I'm going to use. This guy comes in at $85 retail, but he's only available in Chinese stores, so that's where I got the price. Either way, we're going to give cost over to MPU. The aftermarket on this guy is pretty darn high too, so it actually is higher than 180, but either way, MPU will win on cost. And the final factor on this comparison is the member's choice, where I asked my members which one they prefer, just based on their own personal preferences and no other factors. And you can see the score that the MPU is going to win the member's choice category. And not that surprising. So final thoughts on the comparison, and you can see the score there. An MPU is going to destroy the Takara MP-11NT. And no surprise there. I expected this to be pretty one-sided. When Ricky was planning to send this to me, I kind of was like, I don't know if this is worth it. But I know there's people out there who want to see this figure because it is the original version of thrust. We haven't gotten a new one. It would be smart on Takara's part to go and take the MP-52 mold and retool it for the cone heads. Not a lot needs to be done. I mean, this kind of proves it. Now, this is kind of tricky because do you really give credit to these guys since it's essentially a KO of the MP-52 mold with design changes, significant design changes, of course, but essentially they did not create the design. Now they've improved it greatly, right? Tighter joints, better hardware, good quality paint. They've done a good job, but can we credit them because it's really a copy? So if these guys make it, I think it could be a top version of thrust. But until then, this is what we got. But that's it for today. Thanks to Ricky G for sending this for a comparison. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.